heck of an impact. Man.
Oh, look, Carl wants to talk to somebody.
He give you a thumbs up?
I guess, I don't know.
The 15 tell him I've caught him 50 times. Get out of the way.
Here we go.
I ain't worried about them. 10-4 is what I like to hear. So would we rather have radio call-ins on Monday or free fries from Arby's on Monday?
Colin.
Yeah, you're kidding, right? Completely. I don't buy the fries.
Watch this finish coming down. And Kyle Busch, oh, he just hangs on.
That was outstanding.
It was just that close here 1 year ago. Great NASCAR Nationwide Series action at Kansas Speedway as Kyle Busch just nipped Matt Kenseth, who had led the most laps at the finish. 300 miles, 200 laps, and no, it was not a very good day for Carl Edwards, who finished in 38th position. Carl comes back in a much better shape than he was last year. He is second in the point standings, 186 points back of Clint Boyer. You see Brad Keselowski, Mike Bliss had that great run at Dover last week. There is fourth. Marcos Ambrose holding on to a top 10 spot. Guys, last week at Dover, Delaware, Carl Edwards able to pull 21 points closer to Clint Boyer, but he's got 6 races to go. He's going to have to gain more than that if he's going to catch Clint here for that championship.
Yeah, he is. He's going to gain some points, and it's really going to take Clint Boyer that's going to have to give some up before he can really get into this thing. But the way Carl's running, he's running a lot better at this time this year than he was this time last year. Even though he was the champion and had a big lead, he's still running really good right now.
Yeah, he's going to have to make sure that each and every week is a positive as far as gaining points on Clint Boyer. But what's been impressive is we see Clint Boyer right here. What's been impressive about him, we've seen him have some troubles. Bristol, last week at Dover, get the front end alignment knocked out, the fenders knocked in, and he still comes back with a reasonable finish and doesn't lose a lot of points. So if he can continue to do that, then he's well on his way to a championship.
It's all about consistency for Clint Boyer. He's only had the one win, but the last few weeks, 2nd, 7th, 3rd, 10th, and nothing outside of the top 10, although Carl has beaten him in terms of finishes the last 3 weeks in a row. It has been very, very close. Clint had the largest points lead of the season coming out of Richmond, 207 points, but finished 10th at Dover. Carl finished 5th last week and gained 21 points. And as you said, anything can happen. And here's the irony. These two guys consider this racetrack their home track because Clint Boyer is from Emporia, Kansas, about 107 miles away, and Carl is from Columbia, Missouri, about 125 miles from here.
Yeah, but I can assure you that Clint Boyer's thinking, having been in that position before in the Cup Series with somewhere 180 to 200 point lead, you're always thinking about those things that can happen and how quickly that can evaporate just with a piece breaking or something like that. So he's not feeling very good about even that 180 point lead right now. He thinks, I need to make this gap a lot wider.
He got away with one last week, too. On pit road, he pulled his car out on the outside of Carl Edwards in a dangerous position, put himself in a bad spot, and banged the car up, but still was able to come back with a decent finish. So it could have been a lot worse last week, and I'm sure he's going to learn something from that and try to protect this point lead.
Yeah, he's glad that there's just grass here outside of pit road. You can see him right here. They're exiting the pits on the outside of Carl Edwards. Then David Rudman pulls out of his pits. And we heard Clint Boyer say after that race that he was in a position that he knew that he shouldn't have gotten himself in, and he was fortunate to get out of there, just like you said, Andy, with a pretty reasonable 10th place finish.
I'm sure the boss man's had a few words with him, too. They said, look, we don't want to give anything away. If these guys beat us, let them beat us, but we're not going to give it to them.
Carl Edwards climbing in his car. Now remember, both these guys just finished a NASCAR Sprint Cup qualifying, so they've been out there trying to hustle the new car, the Cup car, around the track, and then they get into what in essence is the old car they're running the Nationwide Series. How much of an adjustment is this?
It's a lot of adjustment, I think, more for the drivers. These guys have to really adjust to a car that doesn't have a lot of power, a lot less power than the new Cup car, and half the downforce, basically.
Yeah, they'll be driving it a lot further into the corner. Practice. There's cars on the racetrack right now. We see Carl Edwards not there. Here's Jeff Burton on the racetrack, one of our first cars out.
Jeff Burton won this race here in 2002. Still looking for his first win in the NASCAR Nationwide Series in 2008. He won 5 times a year ago.
I'm sure he's a lot more comfortable in this car than he was his Cup car. We watched Sprint Cup qualifying here, and Jeff Burton had a handful with his car. This car looks like he's driving pretty good.
You can see he really got the left front pinned down. Could have been simulating a qualifying type run here right off the go. Trying to get down below the white line on the front stretch.
They've had one NASCAR Nationwide Series practice earlier today, and Jeff Burton was 12th overall on that sheet. 38 car Jason Leffler was 17th in that session, his Toyota.
First laps on the track, these two cars that we saw, Jeff Burton and now Jason Leffler, were 0.03 of a second apart. 32.65 to a 32.68 for Jason Leffler.
Joe Logano, he's the fastest so far now. He just jumped up there.
We were talking about our points leader. Let's check in down there with Jamie Little.
Well, Clint Boyer just all geared up. Carl Edwards getting pulled out right now. You guys mentioned last weekend and what happened. They got together on pit road, and of course he got the short end of the stick. Clint Boyer, he lost 21 points to Carl Edwards, so it's narrowed that gap just a little bit. But here we are in Kansas. So what do these two drivers have in common? Well, this is their home track. Clint Boyer, of course, grew up in Emporia, Kansas. But the thing is, neither driver has ever won here in the Nationwide or Sprint Cup Series, and both would love to get a win here today. All their family and friends, all their old racing buddies here watching them, guys, and they would want nothing more than to get a win here today. Now in practice earlier today, the first practice in the Nationwide Series, they were 4th and 5th on the board. Clint Boyer being 4th, Carl Edwards 5th. Right now it's happy hour, guys, and one more chance to get these cars right for the race. Dave?
Well, Jamie, the guy who is 3rd in the championship is Brad Keselowski, and of course today he wanted to get as many laps as he could in practice on the racetrack. But after only 2, there was an altercation on the track that sent his car into the wall. The crew made some fast repairs, sent him back out for a couple more, but where the guy who got the most laps during practice was at 45 laps, Keselowski got just 5. They spent the rest of the afternoon repairing this race car, trying to get it back to its race readiness, and they'll send him back out now during final practice to find out just how they did. Doc?
There was the contact. Brian Clausen in the 40 car coming together with the 88, and there was damage on the car, and they opted not to go to a backup car. There looks to be minimal damage there, Andy.
Yeah, that's not too bad. You see that tire mark on the front end. They can fix some minor damage, but if you start banging up the fenders and hoods and all that, you have to kind of consider going to a backup car.
Yeah, they actually had the hood off the 88 car in that first practice session, beating it out because he got that far up under the back end of this 40. Who had some damage to the left rear. Jamie?
Well, I actually just talked to Brian Clausen. I was talking with him to him in his hauler, and he said they were actually okay. They had a little bit of damage, suspension damage on that right front, but they were able to fix it and get back out on the racetrack. Now, he wanted me to know he's going to be in this car at every track except for Texas, where Juan Pablo Montoya will be behind the wheel. But Brian Clausen, guys, got a new experience this week. He was at Lowe's Motor Speedway testing the 40 car that shut down of Dario Franchitti, and he told me they were testing it because they're working on sponsorship for this year, and if they get a sponsor, Brian Clausen could be in the Cup Series before the year's end.
A lot of drivers getting opportunities to move to the Cup Series. 14 drivers are in the will be running both races over the weekend, both on Saturday and on Sunday. And Sunday, it is race number 3 in the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup here at Kansas Speedway, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Beginning with NASCAR Countdown, Alan Bestwick, Brad Daugherty, and Rusty Austin. 400 miles. Who will it be? Can Greg Biffle continue the domination? We'll find out. Back in a moment. Back at Kansas Speedway, NASCAR Nationwide Series practice. Here's our points leader, and oh, by the way, the fastest car thus far in this session is Clint Boyer. Let's ride along with him for a lap.
Now on board here, right at the start-finish line, you'll let the car go back out to the wall and make a really wide entrance into this corner, you can see. Making that straightaway as long as he possibly can, Andy.
Yeah, and I guess you're getting back wide open right here. These cars here can run a lot of throttle.
Not having nearly the horsepower down the back straightaway. You can see almost 180 miles an hour there.
This car actually looks like it's handling great.
Yeah, he didn't waste much time getting wide open to the throttle, did he?
No, sir.
This would be the faster part of the track. Should be over 180 miles an hour before he lets out.
See, just barely touching the brake and right back to the throttle. You can't do that in a Cup car, can you?
No, not at all. No, not with the new car. You're having to back out before then and then just play with the throttle on the exit of the corner. These cars with the tapered spacers that they're running, they have to get back to the throttle as fast as they possibly can. He's really never getting below 150 miles an hour in the corners.
Now, they do run a spacer that limits the horsepower on these things, but they still make a lot of power.
Yeah.
I mean, they still make over 600 horsepower, closer to 700 horsepower.
Here comes the guy that's challenging him, who is also the reigning NASCAR Nationwide champion, Carl Edwards. And oh, by the way, the NASCAR Sprint Cup points leader. 5 of the top 6 drivers in the chase are also in the nationwide race on Saturday. 8 of the top 12. On the track, 7 car, Mike Wallace and his Toyota. Had the great 3rd place run early in the year at Kentucky at one of the mile-and-a-half tracks. Mike real good on his mile-and-a-half racetracks.
Yeah, he is, but he's not that great here today. He's 19th out of the 25 cars that have practiced so far. I'm sure they're not real happy right now with their car.
Yeah, and it makes it difficult to keep up. As we get into the second practice session with these guys, because of the limited amount of tires that they have to run for the weekend, you don't know exactly who's on what kind of tires, so it makes it a little bit difficult to compare. But Mike is down in the 19th spot of the 25 cars that have been out so far.
Let's update what's going on with the 29 car of Jeff Burton. Dave.
Yeah, Jerry, just a couple laps on track before he wanted to come back into the garage and get just a minor change on that car, and he's doing the same thing again, coming back down onto pit lane. Really tight on the first run. We'll get a report on this last run. They just made a slight track bar adjustment to try to get that tightness out of the car between runs here for Jeff.
Jeff has led every single nationwide race he has run here. He's been here 4 times. In fact, he holds the distinction of leading the most laps as a winner here. Back in 2002, he led 48 of the laps. No one has led that many laps and won the race.
I'll take a wild guess to say he didn't like that change. Not staying out any longer than that.
Final time we will see Greg Biffle in 2008 in the NASCAR Nationwide Series, driving the City Financial Ford. He said this is their last together because they're going to try to win the Cup Championship. Now, this sponsorship, DJ, will move to the 17 car, I'm told, for some of the other events.
Yeah, they'll still be running and with the City Financial sponsorship over at Rouse Fenway. So they're going to continue to be on the car. It's just Greg's last effort, and he really would like to get them to victory lane. And it's a place he obviously knows how to get to after winning the Cup race here last year.
Yeah, he's hot right now, too.
Jamie?
Well, Greg, definitely a good guy to watch for you guys, and you can pick him as a favorite as well. He's done great here in 7 starts. He's had all top 10s. His worst finish, 10th here 1 year ago. But Greg, as you guys said, looking for his first win with his team this year. I think this is a good spot for him. He's 8th right now on the board, so we'll have to keep our eye on this 16 team. They want to go out with a win, Doc.
Hard to get much better than that. 5 top 5s, 7 top 10s, and 7 trips to the racetrack. 9 car. Let's take a look at the 9 out on the racetrack. Casey Kane wasn't scheduled to drive in this race, but because he was ill at Las Vegas and was unable to perform out there, they decided to add this race to their scheme for Gillette Evernham. And this was where Casey gave Gillette Evernham, by the way, their very first ever NASCAR Nationwide Series victory for that organization back in 2005.
So this is a makeup race for Casey.
Makeup.
Follow Casey around here. You see most of these cars down on the bottom of the racetrack, but you can see the group starting to widen out. You see Casey coming in back to the pit road, headed to the garage to make some adjustments on that car.
There's Kyle Busch in this 32 car.
Yeah, different look for this car. Life lock.
It's going to be hard to pick that one out on Saturday. We're not used to seeing this color.
Kyle, remember, has 8 victories in the Nationwide Series. One of those came in the 32 car at Charlotte. The others were in the Joe Gibbs cars, the 18 and the 20.
And chances are we won't have too hard a time picking it out because he's usually up front.
He's usually the guy up front. You're right. Maybe
I was waiting for that to come out of DJ at the end there. We won't have too far to look.
Kyle Busch is 11th right now as you see him bringing his car back to pit road. These guys are not making very long runs right at this point in time. They just want to try some different things. Edwards onto the racetrack finally in this final practice session.
Yeah, he's running about 4 laps so far. We heard Jeff Burton talking about his car, how they were going to adjust the track bar. You know, we've seen how you adjust it with the wrench in the window and run it up and down, but Let's go down and get Tim Brewer to explain to us exactly what the car does when you do change that track bar. Tim?
Andy, you're right. What we're doing, folks, we're changing this handle over here. What we're doing, we're raising. What we're raising, you see this bolt area back over here, and it's got a bracket. We're going to actually raise that pivot point up on the right rear of the car. What that's going to do is actually free the car up because it's raising the rear roll center of the car. When you raise the rear roll center of the car, what you actually do is enable the car to turn better from the center of the corner off. Now, the other flip side of that coin, as far as we run the car down, it actually plants the rear wheels to the ground, making the car tighter from the center of the corner off.
Hey, Tim, we get fans that call in and write in and ask us, so there's two openings in the back window of the car. One is, and you see him putting a wrench in one versus the other. Now, one is the track bar, what you're talking about, and the other one is the wedge bolt, right? Explain where they are on the car so you can see from a distance they're going to do what when they're in whichever opening, in the bottom hole or the top hole.
In the lower position of the right rear of the car, that's where we actually adjust the track bar. But this area over here, that's where we can go in, insert the same handle. It goes down through. It sets down on top of the rear coil spring, and we can either load or unload that spring by going through that entrance of the window as well as over here on the left rear. But we don't have any window over here, Jerry.
Okay.
What happened to your window there, Tim?
Somebody cut it away, Andy. That's the reason they call it the cutaway car.
That track bar adjustment was a great idea, and I think I know who came up with that, didn't Andy?
Yeah, well, I dreamed it up. I had a guy working at Childress that actually made the first one, and we were just trying to figure out a way we could adjust our race car with, you know, it was hard to do with just the jack screws, and we really needed to adjust that track bar, so we came up with a little system to do that, and it's used on every car today.
Joey Logano back in the 20 car. Let's listen in to his radio.
Starts off pretty decent in, turns center pretty good. It's a tad on the loose side off. Then that goes away and ends up getting a little bit free in. Not bad. And so it's getting tighter to center. Off was pretty much the same. Improvement over last time for sure.
You decipher that, Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. He's giving some good information right there. It's kind of hard to understand. That's one thing you have to do when you have a new driver is learn that language and what they mean when they say something. He's actually pretty, demonstrative in what he's saying and how he's breaking down the corner. The crew chief then has to take that information and make the right adjustment.
Final practice for the NASCAR Nationwide Series cars. And guess who is atop the speed chart? The guy who has won more in the NASCAR Nationwide Series than anybody in the history of NASCAR Nationwide Racing. Mark Martin is right there. Mike Bliss, by the way, second overall. Saturday night means college football on ABC. Either a Big Ten matchup, the Fighting Illini taking on Penn State, or it's Virginia Tech, the Hokies, facing the Cornhuskers of Nebraska. Saturday night football presented by Southwest Airlines on ABC, 8 o'clock Eastern. Check your local listings for the game in your area.
Illinois might need to bring 14 people on defense if they're going to slow Penn State down, what I've seen so far.
How good is Joe Pa's offense there for the Nittany Lions? Let's see what kind of offense the 88 can put up after that little pushing and shoving match in the first session with the 40 car.
Car looks pretty good through the corners. He's 14th quickest, but only been out there for 6 laps right now. But the car looks pretty stable. And
well, the good news is his teammate Mark Martin in the 5 car is the fastest car so far in this practice. So regardless of how it goes here, he can compare notes with Mark when it's over. Right there's Mark Martin's car in the garage area.
Jamie?
Well, Doc, I'll tell you what, I was walking around the Nationwide garage a little while ago, and the crew chiefs all seemed to tell me the 5 car is the car to beat here. And so Mark Martin came in just now, and he told his crew, hey, guys, I got a little too tight, and that actually is good news here. So they were going to make a couple adjustments. They made a wedge adjustment, and Mark told him to take some of the fuel out, but not too much. He's going to go back out on the track and make a race run, get a better feel for the car, and then adjust accordingly after that.
Yeah, the reason they're going to drain some of that fuel out is because as they run these runs, these longer runs, that fuel load goes down, and it really does affect the car because that fuel cell, you see that fuel tank is behind the rear tires, and it's got a great effect on the balance of the car weight-wise. So if they want to simulate how the car is going to act late in a run without having to go out there and run 100 laps or 650 laps or whatever, they just drain some fuel out, put some older tires on, and go out there and simulate it.
Yeah, and they probably, as you said, they're putting older tires back on, probably tires that they ran in that first session. What he did that first time out was just a one-lap run simulating a qualifying run. So you don't want a full load of fuel with older tires on there.
But they have to run that qualifying run with a full load of fuel. That's why when they made that simulated run, they had it full. That is a requirement from NASCAR that they have to be full of fuel.
This is the same car that you watched Mark Martin win with at Las Vegas. He led 81 laps to give JR Motorsports, Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Rick Hendrick, the co-owners, their first win. As he goes back on the racetrack, let's check in on the 2-car. Dave.
And another kind of simulation run about to happen here, Doc. That is a simulated qualifying run. The number that Clint Boyer put up on that last run was in race trim. They have taped off the front, cooled down everything they can on this race car, and they're going to send him out to see what qualifying might be like for him tomorrow morning. Remember, these cars will qualify and race on the same day. This is a simulation of that qualifying run for Clint Boyer.
Can't do much to adjust these cars because of the fact that these are all impound races. Once you qualify, you're done. So a whole different setup here than what they have in the Cup Garage.
Well, you can't change the springs or the shocks or sway bars and some of the big parts of the setup. NASCAR does allow you to do some things wedge-wise with those wedge bolts we saw Tim Brewer turning down there in the tech center, but that's the things that they let you do, air pressure and wedge bolts. You can't change the big stuff.
Here is a name from the past, and welcome back to NASCAR, Bobby Hillin Jr. Bobby is now 44 years old from Midland, Texas. Made his Cup Series debut when he was 17 years, 10 months of age. How about that? Been around a long time and been away from NASCAR. Good to have him back in a NASCAR Nationwide Series.
This is really great to see Bobby Hillin back. He's one of the good guys. Hope this thing lasts for him. Hope he can run a few more.
Got a couple of wins in NASCAR Nationwide. One at Dover, also one at Nazareth Speedway, now defunct Nazareth Speedway. Has not been in a Nationwide car since August of 2000, so it's been over 8 years.
That's a long time to be out of the car, Dale. Do you forget anything when you're out of the car that long?
I would have to say that, yeah, there'd be quite a bit of adjustment getting back in, especially, I think, as much as these cars have changed over the years. That would be the big thing.
Yeah, the cars have changed a lot over the years.
I'm sure he's probably listened and kept up with sport and heard about coil binding, but he had no idea he got behind the wheel of one of these things and said, oh, that's what you mean.
Bobby slows down. Let's check in with the second quickest driver on the grid right now. Jamie with Mike Bliss.
Well, Mike Bliss crawled out of the car. Mike, why are you out of the car so quick?
Well, we pretty much used the first practice up. Our tires are done. We ran a whole fuel load on them, and they're pretty much to the point where you're not going to learn anything. So we did one qualifying run here, and that's all we got. I hate, and I never do this, quit early, but we don't have a choice. So our car's pretty good. Mitsubishi Resorts and Gaming was pretty decent qualifying, but we'll just go home early, I guess.
Hey, Mike, this is the same car you ran last week. You led 44 laps, finished second, your best finish of the year. How does that help this team, and where does that put you guys going forward?
Well, I mean, it gives us a lot of confidence. This car, we have a lot of confidence in this car. I ran it every mile on the track and bigger, so that would be 1.5 miles, 2 miles and all that. So I ran this car to death, and I like the car. We know the car. It's just, it gets around real well. So, I mean, like I said, I hate quitting early. It's kind of a cocky way to feel, but we don't have a choice.
All right, guys, well, Mike Bliss will be back in the car tomorrow. He's not going home. He has qualifying and then the race tomorrow afternoon.
Jamie, you mentioned that performance last week. He led 44 laps to finish second at Dover, best finish of the year. And here is the 5-car back on the track. He was at the top of the speed charts, and he has remained there after they took some of that fuel out to see what they would have in terms of a simulated qualifying run.
Oh, hell, we're going to be fine, Cam. It just spun the left rear right there and turned sideways for me.
That sounded like a good thing for Mark Martin.
Well, I think what he was talking about is he had been tight.
Yeah.
And now they finally got it where it spun the left rear. I think he says, okay, we're good now.
I read about 3 or 4 articles from Mark Martin this week, and all of them had the same quote. This is my kind of racetrack. I love coming to Kansas. Lots of room to race, very wide. And, man, I love this Nationwide car. It is fun to drive.
I think he has fun in any kind of car he gets in. He makes it fun for the crew, too. You see Carl Edwards in here working on his car. Dave, what are they doing?
Well, they're underneath right now, DJ. I haven't been able to tell what they're doing yet. I wanted to check the fun meter, though, on Snappy Loose in the center of the corner. When they're snappy loose at the center of the corner, DJ, what's that feel like?
Well, as long as you can bring it back and talk about it, that's a good thing. You know, it's not all that bad.
It's here in one piece. They are gonna that last run. They actually took some of that away. And Andy, I understand you know exactly what these guys are doing.
They got the right side jacked up. They've got you see that little shim they're passing around. That is a shim that goes into the trailing arm bracket where they can move that rear end forward and back on the right side, and that actually changes the rear steer on the car, and changes the handling. So don't know which way they're going. If you could have grabbed that shim out of their hand and showed it to us, we could tell which way they're going.
I'm going to try to remain their friends for at least one more day here.
Okay. Good to hear from you, Dave.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, it'd probably be safe to say that if he was snappy loose, that they're probably moving that housing back forward a little bit, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Adjustments being made on the 60 car for Carl Edwards. Right now it is Martin Martin, Mike Bliss, David Stremme in the Rusty Wallace Chevy, Boyer, and Hamlin. Those are the top 5. Back at Kansas Speedway, NASCAR Nationwide Series practice. There's the reigning champions car still up on the jack, and Jack stands underneath the car. Andy, always safety first, huh?
Oh, yeah. You don't ever jack one of these cars up without putting a jack stand under it. I don't care. I watch my guys. I very rarely saw them try to go into the car without a jack stand, but if they did, they got a scolding.
We were talking about shims and things they were going to do to the trailing arm to make an adjustment on the car that was, as Dave said, snappy loose. So let's show you exactly what they're doing. We head down to our tech center and Tim Brewer.
Thanks, Jerry. Folks, the trailing arm cross member sits right up under the center of the car. This affixes to the trailing arm. But what we've got right here, we've got an eccentric. What we can actually do, we can actually manipulate the rear end housing through the trailing arm forward or aft. But I'm like DJ. If that thing's loose getting down in there, he's actually going to move this thing forward, and that's going to bring the trailing arm forward to bring the right rear wheel a little bit forward. And what that's going to do is put the back end of the car down in the pavement, make the car tighter from the center off.
Before this practice is over, Tim, we're going to get you under that car and get you dirty.
Oh, no. That's not going to happen.
Let's update what's going on with Clint Boyer, Dave.
Well, and Doc, I guess we'd have to believe that mock qualifying run he was doing was somewhat satisfying because you guys are done for the day?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, you know, you only got one shot at that. We can't go back out and try it again. Obviously not where we wanted to be. We're probably a half second off right there, but of that 5 car. The car's good in race trim. I think we're where we need to be. You're just so limited on tires. You know, you can't be tricking yourself out here. That's starting to cool down quite a bit. You're halfway, you know, on race trim, you're halfway through a fuel load. Tires are starting to wear out, been through a lot of cycles, so just call it good and work on it tomorrow.
Do you guys think about waiting until the end and cooler temperatures or anything like that just to get even closer to qualifying conditions?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of did what we had to do, you know, what you're up against there. Obviously, we wanted to be out there a little bit sooner, you know, as far as closer to qualifying time, but it is what it is, and you just got to play your cards right.
All right, 2 car done practicing for the afternoon, guys.
Yeah, you can tell they're finished because they've got the checklist already taped to the car. Right there it is. You can see these guys have to go through that list and check off everything on there and put their initials on it to make sure that they've checked that piece of the car and that part and make sure it's right.
And it's your initials that mean you did it. And if it doesn't get checked or something happens, then you're the one they come looking for.
Yeah, you see Michael is the front suspension guy, and he has to put his initials beside every one of those things. And that's how they make these cars so durable and reliable for these races. They go over them just about like you would an aircraft or something.
Jeff Burton climbing the speed charts a little bit, now up to 8th fastest in the Richard Childress Chevy.
So look, these cars have a little different line getting down in the corner, Dale. They're able to arc it in a lot more than those Sprint Cup cars can because of the aerodynamic characteristic of this car versus the new car.
Yeah, they're trying to make the straightaway as long as they can and then make the corner literally as straight as they possibly can and just help them carry more speed through the center of the corner, but that's because they have more downforce. Dave?
And they're actually kind of going back and forth on this setup now. Remember, he started out just a little bit tight. Then they got it very, very loose because the last time they came in, they took a spring rubber out of the right rear. They played with the camber just a little bit to help the turning after they took that spring rubber out, but kind of switching back and forth on the 29 car, looking for all the speed they can get. Jamie?
Well, Dave, it's always a pleasure to see Mark Martin back in the 5 car in the Nationwide Series, and he has crawled out, called it a day. How good is this car as you sit number 1 on the board, Mark?
Oh, it's awesome, man. I just want to thank GoDaddy.com and Dale Jr. and Rick Hendrick and all these guys that work on this thing. I'm going to have some fun tomorrow. I got a great car with our U.S. Army Chevy for Sunday, and this is going to be a lot of fun tomorrow, I think, too.
We see you back in the 5. Can't help but remember the Las Vegas race. You got the first win for Junior Motorsports. What do you think? You think she'll stack up? You can get another victory here tomorrow night?
These things are hard to win, but, you know, we've got the stuff to do it with. We'll just have to see if we can pull it off.
All right, guys, we got to enjoy it while we can. He's only going to be in this car one more time, and that'll be at Texas later in the season. Doc?
What a weekend it could be for Mark Martin. He qualified 3rd with his Cup car, the U.S. Army Chevrolet, behind Juan Pablo Montoya and Jimmy Johnson for Sunday. And right now he's atop of speed charts. He could put this car on the pole for the nationwide race. Mark Martin's the kind of guy who can win them both.
He can win any race he's in.
27 car. This is Jason Keller, by the way. Jason began the year driving the 11 car, CJM Racing. Last week they parted ways, and Jason now driving the Kimberly Clark sponsored Ford for Baker Curb Motorsports.
He's in the top 20 on the speed charts for this practice.
And a pretty good run last week in his first outing in this car. This is a team that's had some personnel shuffling over the last few weeks. Crew chief left, and they've had to move some people around.
They're in a real rebuilding phase, and now Jason coming over can't do anything but help that effort.
Yeah, I get someone, this caliber driver, Jason Keller, that knows the chassis, knows these cars. It can only be a benefit to this race team and make them a better team than what they've really been probably this entire year.
Jason making his 452nd career start, 11 poles and 10 wins in his career here in the Nationwide. David Rudeman.
David really wants to get this car to victory lane. The number of times that they've had that they felt like they had a good enough car to do it, seems like either a caution flag came out at the wrong time, they got a flat tire, just different things that have kept them from getting there and being in contention every week.
That's why it's so frustrating for these guys when they don't get it done on those days when they have the car that can do it, because you don't have that car every week. And you know, right here they're struggling just a little bit. They may have it tomorrow, but those opportunities are few and far between.
Jamie?
Well, Doc, I talked to Jerry Baxter, the crew chief for David Rudeman, and I asked him what was going on today. He had a long face. He's working away on his car in between practices, and he said, you know, we haven't been running well enough. Not at all. He said, we have some bright spots, but not enough. So we thought we'd try something completely new here. Some aero differences. They worked on the body. They brought a new back end. They tried all these different things, including a left front coil bind. They said they're a right front coil bind team. They've never run the left front. So they tried all these things. Well, it didn't work so well. So they had to change everything back to what he said they know. So they're just trying to make up for lost time in that first practice. Dave?
Jamie, the 20 car of Joey Logano is back in the garage. They've been making gains, which is something you want to see when you spend all this time practicing. They started the session knowing that they were better than the earlier session in the day. That is a gain. The car was getting looser and looser on entry into turn 3 and 4. So they made some gains on that from basically a 3 to 4 loose on a scale of 5, I believe. Now down only to a 2 loose on entry. So that's going forward. That's what you work at during these practice sessions.
Yeah, if he gets that loose into that corner totally out of there, then I would almost bet you that he's going to say, well, now I'm too tight in the center. That's always been a corner that you just don't have banking as you enter the corner. There's only 15 degrees of banking there as you get to the center of the corner, and that banking just doesn't seem to start where you would really like for it to hold. So you always tend to be just a little bit loose into that corner.
And he's got a better 5-lap average than Mark Martin, which is pretty impressive. But these rookie drivers get an extra set of tires, and I don't know if that might be playing into this practice session, because we've heard that some of these guys don't have enough tires to keep practicing.
Here are the 5-lap averages at Kansas. Joey Logano, in terms of just average speed, is there atop those. Mark Martin is there. Leffler, points leader Clint Boyer, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick. David Rudeman also in that group, and you heard Jamie talking about Jerry Baxter wanting to get this car to be more consistent. Well, they may have done that in the top 10 in terms of 5-lap average speed. Back with more coverage in just a moment. Two-time nationwide champion Kevin Harvick on the track in what is a mock qualifying effort for his Chevrolet. He made an announcement this week that he and Cale Gale will share this car. In 2009, they will put Ricky Carmichael, the motorcycle superstar, in an ARCA car some, and also possibly in a third truck with Jack Sprague and Ron Hornaday. So this KHI, Kevin Harvick Incorporated team, really coming together for next year.
Definitely have a lot of things going on in a lot of different directions, but I think that's what Kevin and Atlanta have done with this, is trying to keep it going and giving young drivers opportunities to come along, and who knows what will happen in the future as they continue to grow this. Will it be something that they move on into a Cup Series team?
Yeah, I like what Kevin's done. He's giving Cale Gale, the young guy, a chance in this car. He's also been pretty good for the old guys. How about Hornaday in that truck?
Yeah, yeah, and he's
Doing a
pretty
great
good
job
for
over
himself.
there.
Yeah, as he just went to the top of the list as far as speeds go, 31.94, which is about a 10th of a second quicker than Mark Martin went.
Touch 3, but I think that'll be better in the morning.
Camping.
Yeah, well, I think there'll be more grip in the morning.
Do want to update the fact that Camping World, a sponsor on this car, will not be back with them. It'll be on the truck in 2009. But Ron Hornaday, it will not sponsor the nationwide car for 14 events. They will have a replacement, which they will announce a little later on. Let's check in where Dave is caught up with Jeff Burton.
Yeah, and Doc, don't blink today or you're going to miss some of these guys' practice laps out here. We showed you at the beginning kind of going back and forth from a tight race car to one that was maybe a little bit looser. What'd you end up with?
You're always going to be tight. And the trouble with the nationwide thing is because we're trying to save money on tires, you only have one set of tires to practice on. So in the second practice, you're running on, empty of fuel and old tires. You're always going to be tight in that situation. So it's hard to, what you got to do is try to figure out when you put new tires on it, what it's going to be like halfway through a run. If we got the car freed up like I really wanted to be right now, it'd be so loose when we took off I couldn't drive it. So it's a compromise. We're pretty good right there. I'm pretty happy with it. I'd love for it to turn just a little better. And we're gonna make a little change before the race tomorrow to try to get the Holiday Inn Chevrolet to turn just a touch better. But I'm pretty happy with it.
It's very interesting, guys, how an economy move really makes a technical practice session out of everything they do here.
Really does, Dave. And Jeff Burton, by the way, one of the 7 different winners here. There have been 7 races, 7 different winners in the NASCAR Nationwide Series, and Jeff Burton was one of them, leading 48 laps to go to victory lane in 2002. By the way, he is the 4th winningest driver in the series history, behind Mark Martin, Kevin Harvick, the Iron Man, Jack Ingram, and of course Jeff Burton has 27 wins. Denny Hamlin driving the 18 car back in a Joe Gibbs car this weekend.
These guys trying to get as many laps, but you hear all of these guys saying that they can only get a certain amount of laps on these tires because they had the practice session earlier. So we see Carl Edwards right in front of Denny Hamlin as they come back on the pit road and back towards the garage area. They're just trying to maximize that time with what tires they do have to run this. And it's a good thing for the series, I think, in limiting that and trying to keep the cost down.
Oh, that's a great move to keep the tire, from having to spend so much money on tires. But it's one thing you can do is, if you're not careful, if you take a set of tires that's really worn out and try to adjust your race car, you can get yourself really out to lunch. So these guys you're going to have to be careful, and the smart guys know, so they're not going to go out there and try to adjust their car to a set of tires that's worn out.
Yeah, if you notice, most of the guys that we're talking about and have talked to that are in practice are pretty much veterans, whether it's the Cup guys or Mike Bliss's case, who has a lot of laps in these cars too. So they know pretty much what they have, and they're going to stick with that.
Kenny Wallace, the 2-time most popular driver in the NASCAR Nationwide Series, the U.S. Border Patrol Chevrolet. You're wondering why the Border Patrol got involved in racing. They were trying to advertise the fact that they had plenty of jobs available. They needed people to recruit for, so that was a natural for Kenny to be able to get them on board and bring them NASCAR racing.
Here's Jennifer Jo Cobb in the 78 car. That's a good-looking car right there. She's 30th so far out of 43 that have been on the track.
Yeah, nice effort so far. Made a start back here a couple of years ago in the what was the Busch Series, in our Nationwide Series.
Check in the garage. Jamie is caught up with Casey Kane.
Yes, one of the many crossover drivers doing double duty this weekend. 24th on the board right now, Casey, but you're going to go back out. How's the car so far?
It's all right. We're on old tires, so we're trying to get it better, but it's tough on the old tires. And we're going to make a qualifying run still and just kind of see where we're at. But we've been working on it. These guys are doing a good job. We're trying to figure it out and get better, though. It's tough right now.
I was talking to your team, and they said every time he's out on a track like this, 1.5 miles, you love to run so close to the wall, you scare him. Tell me about the line that you're choosing on this track now that it's getting more seasoned.
I think right now just on the bottom, and then with this new package, it seems like you run on the bottom. With the engine package, you run on the bottom a lot more. You can't move around nearly what you could 2 years ago or so. So I don't know. I'd say I'm going to be far away from the wall this year out here. And the Cup cars, they're going to be as close to the wall as you can get probably.
All right, so if you're on the wall, that's something scary, and that's not a good thing. Casey Kane's going to get back in the car, guys, and go for a mock qualifying run here and see what the car has.
Yeah, I saw Wally Rogers there in the background. He was Kevin Harvick's crew chief that was let go earlier in the year. Now he's over there at the Evernham team with this 9 car, and looks like they're having some pretty good success.
Wally is the car chief.
Yeah, Wally's the car chief there on the 9 car. He was the crew chief for Kevin Harvick. We've been trying to get Bobby Hillen to get out of the car so we can interview him, but he's been out of the car so many years now, I guess we can't drag him out.
No, he's not going to give up that seat at all. He wants to stay in there and get as much time as he possibly can. Jamie?
Well, you guys are talking about Wally Rogers. I just had a chit chat with him, and he said since he was released at KHI, he took about a month off, and he really missed being at the racetrack. But he said now he's going to take any job he can get in this Gillette Evernham Motorsports job. Came about to be car chief, but he told me ultimately he wants to get back to being a crew chief. That's really where he wants to be.
He's a smart guy. He'll get back. He used to work for me. He's one of the best guys I've had over there. So he's going to land a good deal somewhere.
Kelly Byers getting back on the racetrack. Last week, his best performance in his brief NASCAR Nationwide Series career. Started on the outside front row and ran in the top 2 for the first 70 laps until he had a tire go away.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. That was probably a car that they had worked extremely hard on the body and everything, and had things really going well until the right front tire went away.
Yeah, that's why I say it's really tough when you have an opportunity to get a good finish or maybe a win, and then you can't capitalize on it. You see right here, he loses a right front tire, right head on in the wall there. That's just a big lick for Kelly Byers. He was okay, but boy, the car wasn't.
2006 ASA champion, Midwestern short tracks, a Wisconsin native, a 2-time Wisconsin State High School wrestling champion. Wrestling with the NASCAR Nationwide cars here. Only his second time to come run at this Kansas Speedway. Here's the 11 car, second race for Scott Lagasse Jr. in the CJM Racing Chevy.
Yeah, this is the car that Jason Keller was driving, and this seat was vacant, and Scott Lagasse applied for the job and got it, and here he is. This is his second start in this car.
Scott impressed some people, the owners here, Tony and Brian Mullet, after winning an ARCA race driving for the Venturinis up at Chicagoland. He was so impressive in the ARCA performance, they decided, we got to get him here to the NASCAR Nationwide Series and able to get a shot in the 11 car. They plan on leaving here this weekend, and they're going straight to Iowa after the race on Saturday. They're going to do a two-day test at the Iowa Speedway out in Newton, Iowa, where the NASCAR Nationwide Series will run in 2009. In fact, a lot of these guys are going to Iowa to test at that racetrack.
That's a great place to test. It's a good, smooth facility, very consistent. There's a lot of teams choose to test up there, and you can learn a lot about your car by testing on a place like that that's that consistent. We're on Stephen Wallace's on board.
Let's see who's in this race car. They say
well, it's a 66. It's a 66 car.
And Stephen Wallace's car, but it's his teammate David Stremme that is in the car.
Stremme's up in 5th in his car, in the 64 car, 5th on the speed chart. So it might just be a situation we see Stremme, David leaning inside the car here, getting the belts right and climbing in to go make a couple of laps to see if he can give some feedback as to you know, what may be keeping Steven from getting up there. Steven's right now 21st quickest.
Steven got the headset on, listened to David talk to the crew chief and the crew.
This is something you would see normally in a test session, that you would get in each other's cars and kind of feel them out and see what they're doing, what they're dealing with, and how they compare to your car. Kind of unusual to see that in a regular practice session.
So the young driver trying to get some help from a veteran here in the series who happens to be a teammate, as David Stremme already locked into a top 5 practice speed here in this final session. Back with more in a moment. Stephen Wallace leaning in the window talking with his teammate David Stremme, who's been out in Stephen's car trying to get some information. There's a shot from David inside the car as our coverage of the NASCAR Nationwide Series continues.
It's got some, you can tell when you're in the gas coming off that it's, you know, pushing, like the left rear is digging in the track a little too much, you know.
Yeah, it can't hurt to have that extra opinion or a different opinion on this car. And David Stremme would be a good one to get that from. You know, the crew chief's there trying to figure out how to get this car to do what they need, and you know, maybe David can lead them in the right direction.
While they figure out what they can do to help dial in Stephen Wallace's car, let's check back on the racetrack, and the 60 car is back out. Carl Edwards, Dave?
And Jerry wanted to talk to our crew chief up there. He's coming back in the pits right now, but this was an interesting run for them. Fairly happy with the balance of the race car. New tires on it, not a mock qualifying run. Andy, what are you trying to accomplish there?
Well, they're just trying to see how this car is going to race tomorrow with new tires after a restart. You know, I wouldn't think they would have enough tires to have that luxury, but if they do, then that's why they would do that. I hate wasting a set of tires, though, not doing a qualifying run.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to move, too. The driver wants to know exactly what he can expect. After you made so many changes on older tires, you got to see what you have. There's Marcus Ambrose on the racetrack, who sits in the 12th spot on the speed chart so far. Really seen some improvement with this race team. And, Andy, I think race driver this year.
It's got to make a difference with him being in the Cup Series some and running against the best drivers in the world in stock cars and going out there going, you know what, these guys run pretty hard, and trying to figure out, you know, what he needs to do to be better in that series. I think he comes over here and it actually pays off for him.
Yeah, sometimes when he was complaining about how this car didn't drive good, he's got in that other one. Now he might not complain nearly as much about that. So it gives you a different perspective of the cars and what you can actually do with one versus the other.
Marcus Ambrose, one of 12 drivers who will do double duty, racing on Saturday for 300 miles and 400 miles on Sunday. Our coverage begins on Sunday for race number 3 in the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup at 1 o'clock Eastern time on ABC. Beginning with NASCAR Countdown, Alan Bestick, Brad Daugherty, and Rusty Wallace. And then 400 miles, 267 laps, Juan Pablo Montoya in the Ganassi Sabatis Dodge on the pole. Jimmy Johnson second. Mark Martin and Matt Kenseth in row 2. Should be a good one on Sunday here at Kansas Speedway. Jamie Little down in the garage area has caught up now with Stephen Wallace.
Well, the story we've been following, David Stremme still in the 66 car, taking it out for the second stint. So, Stephen, what are you looking to gain by having your teammate in the car?
Well, Jamie, I think Jimmy John's Chevrolet is not really running the way we want to. We're trying to just get David in there. He's got a little bit more experience than I do here, and he's just trying to get a better handle on this car, trying to make it run a little better. We've just been real tight all day. We've thrown everything but the kitchen sink at it so far. So figured I'd let him take it out, see what he thinks about it, and then we'll talk about it tonight, and then hopefully make some good changes for tomorrow so we get our Jimmy John's Chevrolet up front.
We were kind of eavesdropping on what he was telling you and the feedback he was giving you. What do you think of what he's saying? Does it make sense, and is this a direction maybe that will help you tomorrow?
Yes, I think so. I really feel like me and him kind of drive the same. We usually run pretty close to the same setup. So we'll talk about it tonight, and just kind of go about it that way. But we should get a handling better. A real tight center out, and we've thrown everything at it and just can't get it to turn. So we're working on it, that's for sure.
Great thing about having teammates, guys. David Stremme always willing to help these guys out as teammates or other teams just to make their cars better and help them learn.
That's what it's all about. These guys working good together. The teams obviously work good together, and the drivers like each other. That can't be anything but a good thing for this team.
That's why Rusty Wallace did this. He wanted to be able to get, he knows he's got a young son who was very successful in the ARCA series with 5 wins there, but had a pretty steep learning curve here to get into NASCAR Nationwide and maybe eventually Cup. That's why he brought David Strimmy over with the second team.
He brings that experience and stability to the race team, and it really has helped Rusty's race team in both cars. And right here you see, you know, Stevens' car is not that bad. He's 25th in the practice sheet so far, but they want to be a lot better than that.
Yeah, and they probably haven't made a qualifying type run, and I just noticed that he picked up quite a bit. Strimmy did in that car from what he ran the last time out there, so they apparently are making some good changes. You see the Roush guys here huddled up.
Yeah,
even got the cat in a hat over there.
They're having a debriefing session over there. Carl and Drew Blick is over, the crew chief and a couple crew guys. And now you see Jack Roush looking at the spark plugs. He's got a magnifying light there, you see. They take these plugs out, look at them, and it tells Jack a lot about what's going on inside that engine and how it's performing.
That's actually an otoscope. I used that for many years in the ER, and we checked for ear infections, and he's checking for any kind of problem with the spark plug.
So well, we never called it that. We called it a plug light, Doc.
Okay, I got it. It doesn't surprise me one bit.
And guys, you know what? If these cars ever stop running spark plugs, I don't know what Jack's going to do. This is what he likes to do, isn't it, Andy?
Yeah,
he always pulls the plugs and wants to see what's going on with those things.
Yeah, he's a professor when it comes to that, and he's seen so many of them, and he can look at these plugs and tell exactly how that engine's running. You know, as far as timing, ignition timing, and mixture with the carburetor jets and all that, he knows exactly what they need to look like, and then if they don't look right, he knows what to do.
And he makes a lot of the calls as far as what they're going to change jet-wise and things in that. And, you know, sometimes they don't exactly agree with everything he might say at times, and the drivers I know a lot of times will argue with Jack about that.
You know who wins?
Yeah, Jack wins. There's no doubt about that. But there's times that he's wanting to get some better fuel mileage and looking at that and help them in that direction, and the guys are wanting the engine to run faster, and they feel like that by taking that away, then he's slowing them down. But yeah, Jack wins out, and he's a very, very smart man, so I think probably more times than not, they ought to listen to him.
Yeah, he just made the call on that one, and the engine tuner carried the plugs away with the instructions on how to tune that engine.
If you're an engine tuner for Jack Roush, all you do is pull the plugs out and hand them to him and stand there and say, yes, sir. You saw him marking the individual plugs, and from what he saw, I guess he's looking for different shades of the white and dark in terms of how they burn.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what he's looking for. I don't know what kind of notes he made, but now he's trying to get into the debrief session between Carl and Drew. Okay, Steven's getting back in now.
Yeah.
Let's listen to the feedback that David Strimmy gave here just a moment ago.
Hey, Harold, it's like one of the things, too, it could be on the right front a little harder. I don't think it's, like, as it goes in, it's okay, but it needs to kind of stay over on it a little bit to come off the corner. I think it would help it. It's almost like it comes off a little, and then it's getting tight.
Now, see, that's describing the car probably a little bit different than what Steven was explaining it, and this might really help Harold Holley, that's the crew chief he was talking to, on how to set this car up and maybe make a change or two that would help Steven.
Okay, and these cars don't have bump stops on them, so to do what David's talking about, you're going to put a little bit more rebound in that right front shock possibly?
Well, actually, you'll change the way the car sits on the 4 springs so you can coil bind one a little bit sooner or a little bit later. They're actually talking about that coil bind setup, which is very similar to a bump stop. It actually is the bump stop. You just coil bind the spring and it stops the suspension from traveling.
NASCAR Nationwide Series final practice, and it is Kevin Harvick who is now atop the speed charts. Mark Martin second, Biffle, Kyle Busch, and David Reagan. Final minute to the NASCAR Nationwide Series practice at Kansas Speedway prior to a 300-mile, 200-lap event here on Saturday. Let's check in back in the garage area with Dave and Carl Edwards.
Well, you know, where Clint Boyer spent just a little bit of time on the track, Carl used a great portion of this practice session to dial in the 60 car. What'd you end up with?
Well, this the Scott's Winter Guard Fusion is pretty good. We did not make a qualifying run, so we opted to just kind of go out there and see how it would go, you know, as a race run on sticker tires, and it was pretty good. Anything's better than my qualifying lap on the Cup side, so I'm having fun. Just talked to my brother. He's racing over at Lakeside tonight in a dirt car, so I'm going to go head over there later on and hang out with him and just enjoy being home here in Kansas.
Have these races become more relaxed now? I mean, at first it seemed like all the family was involved and it was a little bit chaotic. Is this easy to do now?
Well, I did notice when I was leaving the pits, it looked like about half of Emporia, Kansas was standing here behind Clint's stall, and I've got a lot of folks coming from Columbia, and it is a little more pressure because I mean, it's the people you know. It's all the people you grew up with and stuff. So it has calmed down a little bit. I had a lot of nerves the first time I came out here and raced, and now I'm just learning to have fun with it and enjoy it.
All right, Carl will race both races this weekend, Nationwide on Saturday, Cup on Sunday. And Jamie, I understand we have some interesting breaking news on the Cup side of this weekend.
That's right, Dave. Actually, NASCAR just announced moments ago in the media center the 42-car Juan Pablo Montoya, who qualified on the pole, is going to be disallowed. They said that the gas pressure in the rear shock absorbers did not meet specifications. So he is not on the pole at this time. If we get more information, we can get somebody maybe to talk to us about it. We will, Doc. So big news. That was a big day for Juan Pablo Montoya.
He would have been our third first-time pole winner, his first pole ever in a 66 career start. And if that is disallowed and that is accurate, we will move Jimmy Johnson to the front row for the second year in a row. Jimmy Johnson will be our pole sitter.
Yeah, NASCAR has a limit on how much gas pressure you can put in those shocks. They came up with that back a few years ago when these guys were putting an extreme amount of pressure in those shocks, actually a dangerous amount of pressure to keep the back of the cars up to make more downforce. Now, I'm sure they weren't at those extreme levels, but they do have a limit on how much you can put in it.
We'll have more. We'll update that exactly what happened and how that impacts the rest of the field on NASCAR Now later on this evening. Let's go down to Tim Brewer and explain to you how this actually works.
Hey, Jerry, this is the actual shock absorber that we use, but let me show you here, folks. This is the oil chamber. This is a pressure chamber right here. You actually open this up and we put a regulator on there and we can actually charge this cylinder right here. But the reason NASCAR put a limitation on here, some of the guys years ago were literally making hand grenades out of these things. They were putting so much pressure on them, you had to make a special tube to hold that much pressure. And that's the reason they come up with a 75 pound of pressure. But the reason we put gas pressure in there is to keep the shock from cavitating, meaning having oil and air bubbles in the thing. So we put pressure in this chamber right here. But NASCAR, when they say 75 pounds, it don't mean 78 or whatever they had in there. So Andy, I'd say that that remains to be seen what it actually was.
Yeah, that's too bad too, because that was Juan Pablo's first career pole, and that's a hard way to lose it after getting that, that pole. But that's a rule that they put in place to keep these guys from actually making something a dangerous situation with those shocks.
What would happen? I mean, would the shock explode if you exceeded too much pressure?
You just heard Tim talking about 75 pounds. We run 75 to 100 pounds of pressure in these shocks. These guys are putting thousands of pounds of pressure in those shocks. Yeah, I'm talking about 1,500, 2,000 pounds of pressure in there to do something that it wasn't really designed to do. That pressure was only designed to do what Tim said, and that's keep the air bubbles out of the oil. And they were using it for something quite different.
Yeah, and to let you know that at 75 pounds, though, just anything over that that will exceed that amount can make a difference in the race car and the way that it drives through the corner. So there's a rule there in place for a reason, and it's so that you don't get an advantage.
22 on the racetrack. That is Andrew Ranger. We mentioned he's made a couple of starts this year. He was the 2006 NASCAR Canadian Tour champion, and he had been primarily racing on road courses up there.
He's run a few oval races here. Of course, his first one was at Bristol, so he got a nice introduction to the sport there and running one of the toughest racetracks. But he's done a nice job in the races that he's had the opportunity to run.
Flags are out, and this will end this practice session. By the way, those of you just tuning in and want more information on what happened with our pole sitter, Juan Pablo Montoya, NASCAR Now will be up at 7 o'clock Eastern time coming up next, and they'll be able to explain exactly what went on and why NASCAR has disqualified the pole sitter. Here's Bobby Hillin Jr. finally climbing out of the race car after being away from the sport for 8 years. They put him back in a Nationwide car. He didn't want to get out, guys.
They had to throw the flags to get him to come off the track.
No, I looked in there, though. He hadn't aged much like me and you, Andy.
I know. He still
as young as he did.
He still looks like he did 10 years ago, or 20.
Let's go down to Dave.
Busted off there. Hey, guys. DJ Kennington normally drives this car during the year, but he's up doing a Canadian Tour race. Bobby Hillin actually called Randy McDonald to talk about driving this race car down here. And Bobby, we're going to jump in right here because we're about to go off the air. But how did this all come about? I understand you placed the first call.
Well, actually, a race fan actually called me. He said, his name's Peter the Cookie Man. He used to hang around all the time. And he said, hey, you need to go talk to Randy McDonald. And Randy and I kept missing each other forever, and we finally talked. And I'm working back at home, and I got my business, and I'm really full time with that. And I told Tom Potts about it, and Tom went and put T4 Spas and Safety Vision together, and came to Randy and said, "Hey, let's do this deal." And just an opportunity I didn't want to pass up.
Fun to be back in it?
It really is a lot of fun. I tell you, I was really nervous before I got in the car today, and each time out I felt a little bit more comfortable, and now we've kind of maybe gone a little bit too far. I'm getting a little on the loose side, so I'm just trying to, just take it one step at a time, getting back in. But I'm comfortable getting back up to speed, and that's what makes me a little confident.
Very cool to have Bobby Hillin Jr. back on track, Doc.
That is so cool. A two-time former winner now back in the NASCAR Nationwide Series, and he will be a part of this race on Saturday. Coming up next, NASCAR Now, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Of course, tomorrow, action coming your way. NASCAR Nationwide Series live flag-to-flag coverage at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. NASCAR Sprint Cup Series happy hour. NHRA action, the Mid-South Nationals qualifying tomorrow at 10:30 Eastern Time. And then Sunday afternoon, round 3. And the NASCAR Sprint Cup chase for the championship, 1 o'clock Eastern Time on ABC. NASCAR Countdown, Alan Beswick, Brad, and Rusty all will be there. And then 400 miles, 267 laps on a 1.5-mile track. NASCAR's heavyweights have come to the heartland here in Kansas City, Kansas for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series and NASCAR Nationwide Series racing. Final practice session complete for the NASCAR Nationwide cars. Denny Hamlin atop the speed charts. Kevin Harvick second, Mark Martin third, Greg Biffle, Kyle Busch. Here's the top 10 in this final session. And of course, remember, they'll be racing for 300 miles on Saturday. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. Once again, Denny Hamlin atop the charts. Join us later for NASCAR Now back here at Kansas. So long, everybody.